Davin Sugiman B. Eng, your freelance newsreader, News55, Straits Times, 5 May 2025. USA. Top story number 7. Trump a pirate? U.S. President Donald Trump has been called many things. But a pirate? For now, that might be a stretch. But like all pirates, he has his eyes on a potentially rich prize. In this case, vast stores of critical minerals in the deep ocean that he says are vital for the U.S. economy. The executive order opens up a new front in Mr. Trump's America First policy that has upended global trade, diplomacy, and foreign aid. He has shown no love for the environment and rubbishes evidence of climate change. But zero-sum competition is something he understands and drives him. Trouble is this time the target is not some choice New York City property, but deep-sea resources that are the common heritage of mankind. Without these critical minerals, there would be no wind turbines, flat-screen TVs or mobile phones, precision-guided bombs, radar or lightweight alloys to make planes. A subset of critical minerals are the 17 rare earth metallic elements vital for many industries. For instance, neodymium is used in high-powered magnets, lasers, and hard disk drives. The move signals the U.S. intends to pursue mining operation unilaterally. For now, the high costs, uncertainty over the buyers of the minerals and nascent mining technology will buy the deep ocean a bit of time. Even so, nations must keep up the pressure on the United States to avoid unilaterally green-lighting deep-sea mining. Stepped-up efforts on finding alternative means of acquiring land-based minerals would also help. In short, given the great unknowns and the potential for damage, it is best that Mr. Trump's plans to raid the ocean floor be consigned to Davy Jones's locker. Still, Mr. Trump's executive order could spur investment and hasten development of equipment. Spain, Portugal. Top story number 8. Green energy, blackout. Over a century of running the power grid on fossil fuels, we learned many lessons about why, how, and when blackouts happen. We now need to learn new lessons about when they're triggered by green energy. On April 28th, Spain and Portugal and a sliver of France suffered what could come to be known as the first major blackout of the renewable energy era. More than 50 million people lost power, and electricity didn't return for nearly half a day. The Spanish and Portuguese authorities have promised a root cause analysis of the incident, and the lessons should be heeded around the world as most countries embrace solar and wind power. Solar and wind-dominated grids aren't bad per se, but they are typically more fragile than those dominated by traditional generation. Of course, they have a huge advantage. They don't pollute. The world didn't walk away from fossil fuel and nuclear power stations because New York suffered a massive blackout in 1977, and it shouldn't walk away from solar and wind because Spain and Portugal lost power for a few hours. But we should learn that grid design, policy, and risk mapping aren't yet up to the task of handling too much power from renewable sources. Unfortunately, green activists believe such concerns represent little more than attempts to delay the shift away from fossil fuels. Instead, the renewable industry should lead the change with engineering and policy solutions. Failing to do so will undermine nothing less than the energy transition itself. Top story number 9. Young and manager. The first decade of an employee's career path used to be relatively straightforward. Enter a company as an individual contributor and gradually work your way up to a managerial position. But as recent research reveals, climbing the traditional corporate ladder is no longer the default or necessarily desired path for many young workers, employees to reevaluate what was truly important to them. Young workers could thus be choosing to prioritize their mental health and preserve work-life balance over securing an impressive job title, and may be unwilling to put in the long, stressful hours often required to attain and thrive in management positions. Another factor could be the growing appeal and accessibility of portfolio careers, where people shun conventional career progression in favor of a patchwork of roles that typically include short-term, contract, and freelance work. Today's workers can pick and choose from a far greater array of options to design their professional journeys on their own terms, and without compromising on success, fulfillment, or financial rewards. Central factor behind why young professionals seem to be turning against management roles is that organizations simply cannot offer employees the kind of job security and career progression they used to. Given this, it's entirely understandable that some young workers are choosing to withhold their loyalty, hard work, and ambition and prioritize personal growth and development over scaling the traditional corporate ladder. Top story number 10. Cold sore and Alzheimer. The common cold sore virus, which is often caught in childhood, usually stays in the body for life, quietly dormant in the nerves. Now and then, things like stress, illness, or injury can trigger it, bringing on a cold sore in some people. This same virus, called herpes simplex virus type 1, may also play an important role in something far more serious, Alzheimer's disease. We believe that the virus stays mainly dormant in the body for years, possibly decades. But later in life, as the immune system gets weaker, it can enter the brain and reactivate there. When it does, it will damage brain cells and trigger inflammation. Over time, repeated flare-ups could gradually cause the kind of damage that leads to Alzheimer. Even more encouragingly, antiviral treatments reduced this damage in the lab, suggesting that drugs might one day help to slow or even prevent the disease. What began as a link between cold sores and memory loss has grown into a much bigger story, one that may help us understand, and eventually reduce, the risk of one of the most feared diseases of our time. USA. Top story number 11. Warren Buffett retire. Surprising people at the age of 94 is no mean feat. Billionaire investor Warren Buffett has retained that capacity. As Berkshire Hathaway's annual shareholder meeting on May 3rd drew to a close, Mr. Buffett announced that he would be stepping down as chief executive of the sprawling conglomerate. Berkshire Hathaway was a textile manufacturer when Mr. Buffett bought the company in 1965. In the years that followed, he turned it into an immense insurance firm and a conglomerate with interests in everything from energy to candy. He deployed a value investing strategy, seeking out companies which appeared to be cheap relative to their intrinsic value. Over the past year, Mr. Buffett has aggressively sold stocks, including a large chunk of his stake in Apple, a tech giant. Now, for the first time in 2 decades, Berkshire owns more cash than it does listed equities. Mr. Buffett had a history of spotting such prospects. He snapped up a large stake in Wells Fargo, an American bank, during a slump in 1990. He invested in companies such as Johnson & Johnson and Kraft Foods, and Wells Fargo again, in the aftermath of the 2007-09 global financial crisis. The list goes on. Berkshire's shareholders must hope Mr. Greg Abel, his presumptive successor, has the same oracular vision. Singapore. Top story number 12. Singapore election, PAP. The People Action Party was returned to power with 65.57% of the vote, bringing the total number of PAP-held seats to 87 out of 97 in the 15th Parliament. The Worker Party retained its foothold in Aljunied and Hougang and successfully defended Sengkang, winning a total of 10 elected seats. Based on its results in Jalan Kayu SMC and Tampines GRC, the party will be able to send 2 NCMPs into Parliament. In an early morning press conference after the PAP's landslide victory, PM Wong said his immediate task was to form his next cabinet, which will be announced when ready. Leaders around the world have extended their congratulations to Prime Minister Lawrence Wong and the PAP on their resounding election victory on May 3rd. Malaysia PM Anwar El-Brahim, Indonesian President Prabowo Subianto, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon. Observers overseas had remarked that Singapore voters had been very rational in recognizing the risks and uncertainties. Education Minister Chan Chun Sing. We are also very glad that Singaporeans have come together and reject identity politics, where people might mix race and religion together, Mr. Chan said. I think there are some core fundamentals that we must all agree upon, regardless of which parties we belong to, because we are all fellow Singaporeans. PM Wong noted that Singapore is one of the most religiously diverse countries in the world, adding that across the country, temples, churches, and mosques are sometimes located side by side along the same street. Amidst this diversity, we enjoy deep harmony. The racial and religious harmony SG enjoy don't happen automatically, but the result of persistent hard work, especially by religious leader. President Tharman Shanmugaratnam, in a Facebook post on May 4th, said that as emotions settle following the election, one thing is clear. Singapore is the winner. Regardless of how we each voted, Singaporeans remain united in wanting the best future for our country. We have seen neither a loss of trust in politics nor the sharp polarization of views that engulfs many other countries. Long may this remain the case. Davin Sugiman Bieng, sign off, your freelance newsreader.